Hey everyone, welcome to Revive Live. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. Who do we have on? We got Brittany, Cody. Glad you guys are with us. We got Tabitha, Dina. Awesome. Low, Tony, John Newton, Tracy. Yeah, Tony, please don't share that. I did not hit very well today in golf. I had a good time just hanging out with Tony, golfing this morning, but it's good to get time in with people from the church and different things to be able to fellowship and share. So I'm glad you joined us today, Tuesday afternoon. It's nice out. And so I just had something on my heart, and I was thinking about it even out on Hey Sarah, thinking about it out on the golf course while we're playing, about just our response, how we respond to things. What's up, Bishop? Thanks for joining us all the way from the Bahamas. I hope you and your wife are enjoying the Bahamas this time, not far from us as we talked earlier today. Bishop called me while I was out on the golf course and got to talk to him. So it was good times. I just want to talk about the fact, Ashley, our response, there's a power in our response and how we respond to situations, and whether it be conflict or whatever may come up. I'm just looking for a certain verse. Here it is. Okay. And so I was just thinking about all of that, and I'm looking for the exact verse I want. I'll just talk about it. It's in John chapter 11, but and our power of our response. So, it dictates how what happens now determines what happens next. And I was thinking about with our response, in golf, it can be a tricky game. I play it for fun. Obviously, I'm competitive and I want to win, but I think about just the response that I have to each shot and how that can matter in what happens next. And if I allow one shot and to affect me, then how my response to that shot can determine how I hit that next shot. If I get frustrated and furious and mad, then it will affect me to honestly hit another bad shot. But when I play more relaxed, I may hit another bad shot, but it'd be better than what it would have been, even if it was a bad shot that I can recover from. So, but I was just thinking about that and the fact that when you think about it, and I want to kind of give you this, life is really about 10% of what happens to you and 90% about our response and how you respond to it. So things happen to you and you're going to have things that happen, but how you respond to those things is really going to dictate what happens next and what happens. Hey, Danny. What happens next in your life, but also what happens next in that situation. So, really, you think about it, the majority of the things that are happening to us, or even a counter reaction to a situation, is really based on our response. So if things are happening and the circumstances and things happening to us, and that's about 10% of our lives, really we're living off the responses of those situations that maybe you can't control, and things that happen to you, or things that maybe someone says to you, or you get offended. And we know about that scripture. Jesus said it's impossible that the offense shall come, but he never said that we had to be offended. And in other words, you never have to take the offense. But how you respond to that really is you're living more off your response than the situation that happened to you, because life is about 10% of things that happen, but 90% of your response, and how you respond to that is going to dictate how you live in the next thing that comes about. And so you really think about that, you're living more off your responses to situations than you are to the situations that actually happen to you. And yet we're so focused on the circumstance. We're so focused on what happened to us, and or how someone talked to us, or how someone didn't do something for us or to us, and how maybe someone did not say something to us, and we allow that to affect us and play with our emotions and play with our feelings, and then we're responding to that. And our response doesn't have to be a verbal response. It can be an attitude, a feeling, a response of our feelings, a response to our attitude, a response to allowing something to get in our mind, and we begin to allow that to play in our mind. And all of a sudden, what should have not really been a serious situation, or something that really shouldn't affect us to the point that we are, but we're allowing our response to dictate that. And now all of a sudden we're down in the dumps, or we're the enemy's got us. Just raked over the coals in our own mind, and here we are allowing our thoughts and our mind and our feelings to dictate our response, and we're responding, and now we're going down this more of a level of feeling worse about ourselves, or playing the "oh me, poor oh me" type of scenario, and it's all from our response. And if we just look at that and be like, okay, I'm not going to allow this to affect me, what happened to me. Hey, Austin, I'm not going to allow what happened to me to affect me the rest of the day. So I'm going to choose my response wisely in this moment, understanding that the rest of this day is going to be dictated by my response, not by the action that happened to me. It's not going to be dictated by the circumstances that happen in my life, but rather it's going to be dictated by my action and my response of my action in that morning. Hey, Jerry. And so therefore you can set up the rest of your day. You can set up your week, and you allow feelings to dictate how you feel. And maybe it's, well, they didn't say this to me, and so now I feel down in the dumps, or they said this to me, or maybe it was and in passing by, not understanding that, I have this unfortunately happen to me quite a bit, or it used to happen more. I try to be cognizant in myself as being a pastor, but people at church try to catch me in the middle of me doing one thing to the next and running from one point A to point B, and want to try to stop and talk to me about something, or talk to me about something serious, and I'm in the middle of doing something, and all of a sudden I don't give the response that they're looking, or the response that they're needing, and therefore they take offense to that, and they allow it to affect them. And I've had people not receive from on a Sunday morning because of that, or I've had people even say, "Well, what in the world?" and even leave the service because not understanding that also in the middle of I'm trying to handle a situation, trying to deal with something, and I may have not given the best response, but their situation and the way they take it, then they respond in a negative way themselves. And really, what happened to them was not on purpose, or not it was accidental. And this may be in your life, and then it happens a lot with being married, and then your response, and then so you're living off your response and how you feel, and you're allowing your response and the feelings that hit you dictate the rest of your day. The exercise in the 10% of your life can ultimately impact and destroy the 90% of your life. So the response, I could even say that the response to the that you respond with, that 10%, it can either hold you back, or it can fuel your success in your life, in the present, in the future. And so the way that you respond in that response, and the way that you exercise in that 10%, the way you respond and the way that you receive, I could say, that in that 10% of your life can ultimately impact and destroy the 90% of your life. In other words, it's going to dictate and destroy your response, and how you're living the rest of the 90% of your life. And so if you think of this today, if you take 100% of today, and you allow and 10% of what happens, so things that come your way in this day, allow it to affect the rest 90% of the day, and how you respond to that, it's going to ruin your day possibly. Or if you respond the right way, you can turn this around and make this an amazing day. And I think about this out of John chapter 11 with Lazarus. And hey, Joaquin, thanks for joining us at work. Several of you do that every day, and I appreciate it. But I was thinking about Lazarus and Jesus' response to this when they came. Jesus loved Lazarus. He loved Lazarus, and when they came and told him that his friend had passed away, and it says right here in verse 3, it says, the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, "Lord, your dear friend is very sick." But when Jesus heard about this, he said, "Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this." In other words, he said, Lazarus isn't dead. His response to that situation. And then what that did is sounded a chain response. Think about that. So Jesus responds to the messengers, well, Lazarus is only asleep. He's not dead. And so he was sending word forth into the future of what was about to take place and what was going to shape the situation. And Jesus was living off of not what happened to him or even happened to Lazarus. He was living off his response. And his response was, his sickness shall not be the end of it. Death will not be the end of this sickness. Yet he's going to live. He only sleeps. He's going to have life and live. And so his response was one of life. It was one of talking into your future of what he wanted and what he saw it was going to be and what he was going to dictate it to be, not one off of the situation. Instead, he lived going off his response to dictate this 90% of the rest of that situation, rather than allowing that 10% of what happened to him dictate that day or dictate how he responded. And so he could have easily said and broke down, and wept over it, and went and said, "Tell Martha and Mary, we will be right there." and we'll be right there, and it's going to be okay. I'll be with you soon. And, Lazarus it was a good friend and dear friend. No, he said Lazarus is going to live. His response to the circumstances, and you have to understand your response to the circumstance is either going to hinder your legacy, hinder your tomorrow, or your future and your family. So, or it can fuel that. It can fuel and add to that legacy, add to your tomorrow, fuel your future, your family. And so you have to understand that your response, there's power in your response and what you're going and how you're going to respond to the situation. And so many times we allow the situation and our feelings to dictate our response to that situation, dictate. And again, life and death are in the power of the tongue. You have to understand that. And so I'll tell you a golf story. And since I was just playing golf, I told Tony this on the golf course, and I even said, because he was like, well, I'm not going to make this putt. I'm like, man, you got to change your confession on that, even in the small things. And I got to watch myself on that today, or even on the golf course. But I remember stepping up. It was years ago, and I stepped up to a par 3. And I was not hitting the ball good. I was in a scramble. Hey, Marlo, and I was in a scramble, and so you play best ball in a scramble. I was not hitting the ball good on this day. I still worked in corporate business at this time, and I said, "Watch this. I'm gonna nail this ball, and I'm gonna hit it straight, and I'm gonna watch me get a par 1 on this." And so. I got right up there, about to tee off on this par 3. I said, watch me hole in one this, because I was hitting the ball horribly. And right before I took my swing, I said, yeah, right. And I hit the ball solid, and it was going right at the pin. And the people in front of us started to take off, and they stopped because of where the ball was tracking. And it landed, and it literally rolled right on the edge of the hole, just within a couple inches to the left, and the ball would have sunk into the hole, and I would have had a hole in one. And here's the thing on that hole in one, in scrambles, you get prizes in this. The prize on this hole in one was $10,000, and it rolled right on the edge of this hole and stopped within inches after it to literally tap it in for a birdie. And I looked straight up, and the people in front of us started going, oh, and started cheering at the beginning, then, cover their faces. And I knew it was right on the edge. And I just looked up to the sky and said, Lord, forgive me. Forgive me. I literally went up and made a confession, and then counteracted that confession with a negative confession. I made a positive confession into my life and into what was going to happen, and then turned around and made a negative confession. And in that moment, the Lord taught me a lesson. Taught me a lesson on the golf course. Your response to what happens matters, and your words matter, even in the small things. Even in the small things. And so what you have to understand is that when something happens to you, in that moment, I could have just given up and said, I'm done for the day. And man, but you know what? Even though I missed that putt, or I missed that chance for a hole in one, I went on and said, you know what? This is going to be a good rest of the round. I struck the ball good, and my response to that, because I could have allowed it to really get me down, in a sense, even though it was a great shot, but just the fact that you miss a hole in one, which is kind of a once in a lifetime type thing. I looked at it, and my response to that, your response, the response to how I was playing was, well, I'm going to hit a good shot. And then I turned it around with a negative response. No, I'm not. And so you could literally, when something hits you in the face, well, you know what? I'm going to turn this around today. I'm going to turn this around today. And you can respond with action or your words and say, no matter what the circumstance is, I'm going to turn this around. Or you can respond in a negative way and say, and allow it to dictate the rest of your day to be a negative day. And so many times when something happens, we play the victim. Look, they did this to me, or they didn't do this to me. They didn't say this to me, or they didn't thank me today, or they didn't do this, or it's something how they said something, not understanding that maybe just trying to put yourself. And the way in my rule when I'm dealing with situations and people is I try to put myself in their shoes before I respond or in my response. I try to put myself in their shoes. How are they feeling or how could they be feeling in this moment? Um, did something happen or something I say maybe triggered something in them? Maybe they got offended. So I need to put, even though it wasn't meant for offense or I didn't say it, thought I said it offense, maybe it was a look I gave, whatever it could be. So I try to put myself in their shoes just for a moment and take a step back and then respond out of that place rather than responding out of my feelings or out of how they responded to me. And so you can either play the victim or choose to say, you know what, I'm not going to play the victim in this role, or I'm not going to choose to play and respond as a victim in this. I'm going to choose to respond differently. I'm going to respond in a different aspect in this moment than maybe they responded to me. And or I'm not going to play the victim just because the circumstance happened to me, or someone said something to me, or didn't say something, or the way they looked at me. I'm not going to play the victim in this moment. I'm going to take a step back. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're going through something. Maybe they just heard something and got some bad news, or maybe they're in the middle of something and I don't know what they're doing. And so I got to take, you know what? That's love. You know, love thinks the best. Love responds with the best, and love thinks the best in others and finds the best in others. So you have to understand, like, maybe they're going through something, or maybe they're just in the middle of something and they didn't mean to respond that way, but yet they responded that way. And that can be the same with text messages. It doesn't even have to be a response face to face. It can be a text message response, and because you choose not to read it right, you get offended, and or someone doesn't respond fast enough, you try to read into that, and all of a sudden you're offended and you're hurt and you're mad, and now what are you going to do? Well, you're living off 10% of what happened to you and allowing it to affect the 90% of the rest of your life, because what you're the rest of your day, because something happened to you. And so I'm going to let this 10% of things that happened to me today, and this is one of the 10%, 1/10 of what happened to me today, and I'm going to allow the text message to affect me for the rest of the day. And so now it's dictating the rest of the 90% of my day. My responses in every situation, I respond to that person mean, and then I take her because I allowed this and what happened here. Now I respond to this, and I respond in a bad way, and I respond to this in a negative way. And so we play the victim, and you have to understand that doesn't help us. That only makes the situation worse for our day, worse for the situation, worse for those that are around us. Your greatest ability is your responsibility. Okay? Your greatest ability is your response ability. Okay? And so your greatest response and your greatest ability is your response and your ability to respond to that situation. Your responsibility is the fact that you have the ability at all times to respond. So how are you going to respond? Your responsibility in the middle of something happening to you is how you're going to respond to it. That's your responsibility. That's not the other person's responsibility. That's your responsibility. How am I going to respond to that thing? How am I going to react to that thing? How am I going to react to what was just said to me? How am I going to react how that person just treated me? How am I going to react to that person just giving me the stink eye, looking at me like that? How am I going to respond to the no response from someone? Oh, that's a big one, isn't it? Someone, you send a text message or you say something and they don't respond to you. How are you going to respond to that? How are you going to respond to that? Because your responsibility and the ability that you have is how you're going to respond to what just happened to you. And so many times we allow the situation to define us. We allow what happens to us, to define that interaction, to define how we're going to treat one another, to define the day, to define the moment. And it affects the rest of the day. It affects the rest of the week even sometimes. And that one little instance, that happened in an interaction, or something happened to us, something that was out of our control, someone said something, someone looked at us wrong, whatever it may be, we're going to allow that to define our interaction, to define the rest of our day, to define the rest of our week, even to define our lives. And your responsibility is how you respond to that. Are you going to allow it to define you or not? Because you have the ability to change how that whole thing plays out. That's your responsibility. You have to be willing to respond to the situation effectively so that it doesn't define you. That situation and the way someone and what you're going through, it can either define you or refine you. So in the middle of that, I'm choosing, okay, my responsibility is how I'm going to handle this, how I'm going to handle that response or no response from someone, how they looked at me, what they said to me. And I'm going to either allow that to define our interaction, define our relationship, define this moment in time, or I'm going to allow it to refine me. The smallest situations, understand, like even on the golf course, hitting a bad shot, I can allow that to define me and define that next shot and influence that next shot or refine me. And I can learn from that and say, okay, I opened up my hand and my club hand and allowed that to go to the right. And if I just make this little tweak and refine me, now I can hit the ball straight and further. And so you allow the situations in your life to either define you or refine you. And so I ask you today, what's already happened in your life, what happened, the circumstances that happened already, the way that someone responded to you, the way that someone didn't respond to you, the text message that you got and that response in the text message or no response in the text message. So how someone looked at you, how someone cut you off in traffic today, how your spouse responded to you. You can either allow it to refine you or define your day today. And so what are you going to allow it to do? Allow it to refine you in the shape that you're going to choose to walk in love. Awesome. Let me change this. You can still hear me. Something happened with my camera. I think my battery ran down again. And so we'll just switch over here. And so you can either allow that to define you and make you or not. And so you have to choose that what you're going to make of the day in this situation. So right now, you have the opportunity to change your whole day, to change your whole situation, to change it all. And what's going on in your life, you have the opportunity to change it. So what are you going to do? What kind of choices are you going to make right now in the rest of your day? Are you going to allow what happened earlier in the day define the rest of the week, define the day? Or are you going to choose and say, no, I'm going to let it refine me, and I'm going to choose that the rest of the today and the rest of this week is going to be different. I'm going to make it different by the choices that I'm making. I'm not going to allow this to affect my relationship with my spouse, with someone else. And so you have the obligation, well, you have the choice, and the choice is yours. And so you have the responsibility of what you're going to do. Hey, great response. Camera dying. Yes. Thank you, Tabitha. And so like I could have just got upset right then, right? And said, man, because this camera now is not as good of a picture as my camera, and the battery running low. And what, one of my responses, I need to buy another battery, a better battery, is what I've realized too. And so that's going to dictate, if I don't learn from what that circumstance was and learn how to respond to that, I'm going to have this situation again in my life. I'll just use this right now as what happened. And so you have to learn that this circumstance happened to me, or something in your life happened to you. And it may be something because you didn't make the choice to do or respond and make a response earlier in your life, or earlier to something that happened, and you didn't choose to change or do something. And now you have to respond to that situation again and again. Or you can choose to let it refine you or learn from it. And so I'm going to learn from this and buy another battery. So I make sure I have enough batteries that are charged up, so that way my camera doesn't die and I have a better picture. And so you have to allow, or you have to let it refine you, not to define you in this moment, right? The pain that comes in life, the circumstances, through the circumstances, the problems that you face, that 10% will either define you or you can allow it to refine you. So think about that. 10% of what happens to you, 10% of your life, things is of what happens to you. The other 90% is how you respond to it. So you can either allow 10% to dictate your life and those things coming, and then you choose negatively, and it's all based. I'm going to 90% of your response is based on your 90% of your life is based on your response. Am I going to choose negatively or positively in this moment? Negative or positively, because you can either allow it to refine you or define you. With your spouse every day, with your kids every day. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. What are you going to speak? What are you going to say over the situation? How are you going to respond to the situation? Are you going to allow your feelings and what someone didn't do or what you thought they should do? You know, that happens a lot too. Someone thinks I should respond or do something in a certain way, and it's not because of how they do it. Then they get upset by it and want to respond to me in a certain way. And then again, what do I have to do? I have to allow what happens to me, then I have to respond off of that. And again, what I like to say is try to put yourself in someone else's shoes before you make the response, before you try to go and correct them or try to just take the feeling, okay, they didn't do this or they didn't respond to me this way or they should have responded to me this way. Well, put yourself in their shoes and give them the benefit of the doubt and walk in love, walk in forgiveness. Don't allow it to dictate and define you, dictate your definition of that situation and define the rest of your day or the rest of your week. Let it refine you so you become better, so you get better out of it. Every situation in your life will either define you or refine you. And if you want to find the better person that's inside of you, the you that you're created to be, you got to allow it to refine you. You got to allow God to take what was meant for evil and turn it for your good. Well, part of that is allowing things to be refined within you so that you can respond correctly and you can respond in the middle of that situation. Listen, when circumstances come and circumstances happen in your life and in that situation, you know, we like that. To quote that verse, well, God's going to turn it for my good. God's taking what was meant for evil and making it for my good. Absolutely. But part of that, the way that he does that is from your response of what happens to you. God cannot take what was meant for evil to you and turn it for your good if your response is negative responses. If you're speaking negatively, if you're speaking death over that situation and in your life, and that you're not going to come out and that you're not going to be the head and not the tail. And if you're speaking positively and you're speaking by faith, then God can take that what was meant for evil and that which looked bleak in your life and turn it around for your good and bring good out of it and bring strength out of it. Or you can allow your tongue and the situation to define you in that moment, and all of a sudden you're going down a path that you don't want to be going down because you took the wrong response to it and you took a negative response to it, and now it's affecting your life. And you want God to turn it for your good, but yet you're speaking death over it. You're speaking curses over it. You're speaking curses over that person. You're walking in unforgiveness. You're not walking in love. You're walking in bitterness. You're not walking in peace. And you're allowing bitterness and unforgiveness to control your life and control your response and control that situation. And you're defined by this situation. You're defined by what happened to you and bitterness and unforgiveness, rather than allowing love to be the run of your life, allowing love to be your response, to see the best in others and to see the best in the circumstance and the best in the situation, and allow it to refine you and mold you and shape you so that you are a better you that comes out of it, that you are a better you that comes out of that fire, that you're a better you that comes out of that lion's den, that you are a better you that comes out of that situation, out of that valley, and that you can ascend to the mountaintop. Many people stay in the valley and they'll never ascend to the mountaintop because they allow the situations and the circumstances to define them rather than refine them. And you stay in the valley when you can ascend to the mountaintop if you would allow the situation to refine you and learn the lessons out of it to mold and shape you to become a better you, and allow God to work in the situation. And then he'll turn that which was meant for evil into your good, and he'll turn that which the enemy is trying to destroy you with and allow it to be a blessing in your life. And so many times we allow someone's look, someone's response, and we allow the enemy to control our thoughts and control our mind, and we don't take those thoughts captive, and all of a sudden we're brought down by our own thoughts in the middle of the situation, and we're allowing to define us rather than refine us. You can allow every single situation that looks bleak, that looks like it's a negative situation in our life, to refine you and turn something that was meant for evil, turn for destruction, into a blessing. Allow God to work in your life. Well, how? How do I allow God to work in my life? By choosing to look at it differently. How you respond with it. Your response matters. The power of your response matters. How are you going to respond to things today? So you have the rest of the day. We're looking at, it's 12:36 right now. Right? 12 hours. There's 12 hours. There's 11 and a half hours left in this day. What are you going to do with those 11 and a half hours? Your morning may have been horrible. The first part of your day may have been horrible. You can turn it around right now with your response by choosing to do so. How you respond matters. Your choice matters. Let it refine you, not define you. Go higher today. Go higher from this point. There's more in your day. There's more in your day. There's more opportunity in today. But so many times we allow the situation, the circumstances to blind what's available in front of us and available for us and to us. Let it refine you, not mold you, or not to define you. Let it mold you and shape you. Let it make you better today. Amen. I love you. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Be blessed. For those that go to Legacy Church, or if you're around the area, or just want to join us online or in person, we have First Wednesday starting tomorrow at 6:30. I have a word for you. I'll be ministering, and I have a word that I want to bring for you that's already on my heart. We can't wait to see you. Be blessed.